What's good, y'all? And welcome to the final preseason preview video of the 2024 season. Of course, we are going over the Boston Celtics in this video. I figured since they're the reigning champs, I might as well keep them for last, save the best for last. Before we get into it, I want to thank you guys for all the support you've shown in the series. It's been a lot of fun connecting with all these people that I've had on, and then also just growing the channel for more of you guys to see. I really do appreciate it. Just want to remind you guys to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you already haven't. Got a lot of great videos coming for this regular season. Also, once you're done watching this video, make sure you check out the link in the description. It'll bring you to a playlist of all the other teams that I've done. And without further ado, let's take a look at the additions the Boston Celtics made this offseason. The Celtics didn't really bring in too many guys, but they did go out and sign Lonnie Walker in free agency. When this signing went down, I feel like a lot of people blew it out of proportion and thought that Lonnie Walker was going to come to the Celtics and be this super huge contributor and be like this sixth man off their bench and stuff like that. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I do think Lonnie Walker is super talented though, don't get me wrong. He's super athletic at the wing. He has the ability to create his own shot, get to the rim. His three-point percentage, as you just saw right there, is pretty solid. And I do think that in the right system, which the Celtics have a pretty good system, he could be productive. But from everything I'm seeing, Lonnie Walker's not going to have a huge role with the Celtics. So far through preseason, he hasn't really been getting too much burn. And then him himself in an interview has said that him and the Celtics talked about him playing in the G League for parts of this season. I disagree with that. I feel like Lonnie Walker definitely has enough talent to be a solidified NBA player on the roster 100% of the time. I don't get paid the big bucks to make those decisions though, and the Celtics are one of the best, if not the absolute best team in the league. So if he's playing for any team's G League, I guess it would be the Celtics. I think he's good injury insurance though, where God forbid someone like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Derek White goes down, he's going to be able to kind of come into the rotation and give them some type of production. Beyond that though, I don't expect him to be anything crazy for the Celtics. Now that we got a chance to see who the Celtics brought in, let's take a look at the guys they lost this offseason. Like I said with the additions, the Celtics didn't really bring in anyone and they didn't really lose anyone. They did decide to not re-sign Oshae Brissett, who's still currently a free agent, as well as Svi Mykhailiuk, who signed a new deal with the Utah Jazz. Now, I know both those guys played a lot of games for the Celtics last year, but when it comes down to actual rotational players, neither of those guys were in it. They played so many games because the Celtics blew out so many people that a lot of the times when it came fourth quarter, they just kind of threw in their third string guys, and that's where they got a lot of their minutes. Now, there is value in having good players like that in case there are injuries or for whatever reason, you know, having subs out there to kind of keep the lead. And I don't want to disrespect those guys. They definitely were solid on the Celtics when they did get their playing time. But again, they weren't in the rotation, and the Celtics brought back everyone that really mattered, if you want to say it like that. So when your biggest losses are Oshae Brissett and Svi Mykhailiuk, I'm going to say the Celtics are doing just fine. And now that we have an idea of who's came and who's went, let's take a look at a potential rotation we could be seeing from the Celtics. You Celtics fans should be seeing a lot of familiar faces here, as it's pretty much the same rotation as last season. In the starting lineup, we have Jrue Holiday, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Kristaps Porzingis. And off the bench, we have Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, Al Horford, and Luke Kornet. Before I talk about the rotation and everything, I do want to say that Kristaps Porzingis is going to miss a substantial amount of time in the beginning of the season. This offseason, he had surgery on a ligament that he tore or misplaced. It was a super rare injury, but it has to do with his ankle/foot area, and he's expected to miss at least up until December, maybe even in January. So obviously, he's not going to be in the rotation. I expect Al Horford to be spotted up in that starter slot. Then guys like Luke Kornet or Xavier Tillman should be getting some extended minutes. We'll talk a little bit more about their center rotation later in the video. But when you look at this rotation, like I said, it's basically the same rotation as last season. And when you were that dominant, it makes sense just to run it back. Don't overcomplicate things. Don't try to add this piece and, oh, we don't really need this guy, so let's make a trade. No, don't do any of that. Just keep everyone here. We've seen the results that happen when you are by far the #1 team in the league. You just coast through the playoffs with one of your most important players missing throughout a lot of that, and you win the NBA Finals. There's nothing to complain about. Just bring everyone back. And I think there's a lot of things that you can point to that makes this Celtics team so dominant and so good. But the #1 thing that I think is the fact that all of their players are very versatile. They can pretty much all run multiple positions and bring multiple things to the game. If you just run through the starting lineup real quick, starting with Jrue Holiday, he is a guard, if you want to say that. He can run point guard or shooting guard. But the Celtics use him a lot as like a forward, almost like a small forward, power forward forward type of guy, even though he is so small. Majority of the time on offense, Jrue Holiday is either going to be spotting up in the corner where he was absolutely lights out. I believe he was the #1 corner shooter last season, shooting like damn near 60% or something insane like that. But if he wasn't doing that, the Celtics used him a lot in the dunker spot to get a smaller defender, being the low man, pull the center out, and then there's no real rim protection there. And although he's just 6'2", he's one of the strongest guards in the NBA, so he's going to be able to just body whoever's guarding him and grab that offensive rebound, or when they get the dump down pass, he could just go up through contact. You know, he has some really tough finishes, and that's without bringing up his biggest strength, and that is his defense. I remember games last year versus the Knicks where one possession he would be guarding Jalen Brunson, the next possession he'd be guarding Julius Randle. Jrue Holiday will literally do whatever it takes on the court, and he is pretty good at majority of the things on the court. Like I said though, he's not the exception here. That's the rule in Boston. Derek White has a lot of those same qualities where he can run point guard, where he's more on the ball, being the main playmaker and facilitator, running the offense through him, or he can play more of a shooting guard role where he's off the ball, spotting up for three. He's one of the Celtics' best three-point shooters. Of course, he also brings incredible defense. His rebounding is amazing. Jaylen Brown, of course, is one of the main scoring options on this team. He can run some 2, some 3. He is an amazing finisher. He's one of the main drivers on the Celtics and gets to the rim with pretty much ease using his strength. But if his scoring is not really there, then he'll rebound the ball incredibly well, or he'll play amazing defense, pick up guys full court. We saw in the NBA Finals, he was picking up Kyrie full court. Like, that's what your second best player is bringing for you. Jason Tatum, I think, is arguably the most versatile player on this team, and that only makes sense when he's your best player, and that's kind of the outlook you have on this roster where you need everyone to be versatile. Of course, he runs a lot of power forward or small forward, but we saw in the NBA Finals, again, he was like their point guard, but he was bringing up the ball majority of the time. He would drive to the paint and then kick it out, make the right decision from there. We saw him have a lot of high assist games in the finals. We also saw him guard the opposing center a lot of times on defense, where he would be guarding Daniel Gafford and guard the lob attempts from Luka, you know, play in the pick and roll, switch on to Luka a little bit too, rebound the ball incredibly well. We haven't even brought up his main thing of scoring the basketball, one of the best in the NBA at all 3 levels. And then to round out this super versatile starting 5, you have Kristaps Porzingis, who can run power forward, can run center for you. He obviously has the super size and length of a 7'3" guy in the NBA, where he can bring you that rebounding, that rim protection. But offensively, he can play some center where he's just kind of in the pick and roll, pick and pop, you know, sitting in the dunker spot. Or he can just space the floor out and be one of the best catch-and-shoot guys in the NBA. And I feel like this great versatility is what gets the Celtics clowned a lot, more specifically like a guy like Jason Tatum, who they won the finals and everything, but fans were still looking at him and saying, you didn't do enough. You got carried because Derek White had a great game, or Jaylen Brown had a great game, Kristaps or Jrue. You know, that's the beauty of it. Pretty much in any given game, the Celtics can go at halftime or mid-quarter, whatever it is, and say, all right, we need more rebounding. Yo, Jrue, you need to focus on that. Derek White, we need some spacing, so you go over here. Jaylen Brown, we need that rim pressure, go that. You know, like, these guys can bring whatever you really need on any given night, and that's what makes them so hard to beat. But now that we have an idea of what this team might look like, let's take a look at their biggest strength. The Celtics are pretty easily the best three-point shooting team in the entire NBA. Here I have their players listed in order from most three-point attempts per game from last season, along with their three-point percentage. Last season, the average three-point percentage was 36.6%, so as you can see, they have loads of above-average shooters. Last season, the Celtics were #1 in three-point attempts per game, #1 in three-point makes per game, and #2 in three-point percentage per game. It is the main focal point of Joe Mazzulla's offense. You have to shoot threes, and the Celtics can definitely shoot threes. 7 of their top 8 players are above average shooters, and even Jaylen Brown, who's the only one that's technically below average, he's damn near average. He's within like 1 percentage point of being average. And if you round up, 4 out of their 8 top players are 40% three-point shooters or better. They have elite shooting. And I briefly talked about this when talking about the versatility, but even their centers and their bigs can shoot threes incredibly well. When you have Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford, 2 guys that are that 3-and-D archetype at the center position, those are super rare to find. The fact that the Celtics have 2 of those guys is almost unfair. It allows them to pretty much have 48 minutes of just 5-out offense, which is incredibly hard to guard, especially when you have the personnel of the Celtics. But it's not even just the base level of, all right, Jason Tatum has the ball, he drives to the basket. Since everyone else is just spacing out, someone has to rotate in, there's an open man, you kick it out, he shoots, he scores. Of course, that does happen, but the Celtics offense is a lot harder to stop because it's not just that they're looking for. Once you have that, all of these 5 players, like I was just saying how versatile they are, they have the ability to hit you with a pump fake, drive, and get an easy look at the rim. Or you rotate over this way to close out on me, let me just swing pass it over there, pass. All of these guys are positive playmakers. They can find the right man. It is literally almost impossible to guard when you have a 5-out offense like the Celtics. And I could have really just put their strength as offense as a whole because they were the #1 offense last year. They have such a great system by Joe Mazzulla and all of these player personnel. They can win without just three-point shooting. But the three-point shooting is definitely the main driving force of their offense, so I figured I would just hone in on that specifically. I almost put their defense as their strength too. That just goes to show you how good the Celtics are. I just narrowed it down to the three-point shooting though. I feel like that is the one skill they are far beyond anyone else in the NBA. No team is perfect though, as we all know, so let's take a look at the biggest weakness from the Celtics. With Kristaps expected to miss some time to start, the center rotation of the Celtics is looking a little shaky. All the centers that they have on their roster is, of course, Kristaps Porzingis, Al Horford, Luke Kornet, Xavier Tillman, and Neemias Queta. I've said this in previous videos, and I'll say it again. I have to pick some type of weakness for every team. This is a little bit nitpicking if you ask me. I feel like, the Celtics center rotation isn't the biggest issue in the world. I think they will be fine in the grand scheme of things. But when you're looking at their weakness, it is their center position. Like I said before, Porzingis will be missing at least till like December or January with his tendon issue. He already had surgery. He's recovering. He's going through rehab. From everything that I've heard and seen, he's doing pretty solid with that. So it's just a waiting time game where we just have to see how long it takes for him to be fully healthy and return to play. But while he is out, the Celtics are going to have to piece together that center rotation fully because obviously they have another great option like Al Horford that they can go to. But Al Horford is going to be 38 years old, and I mean, not everyone is LeBron. I know he's aging like fine wine as well, but there's eventually got to become a time where he kind of does just decline, right? And I do think that he can still bring a lot of value to your team as a three-point shooter, as a defender. He still is incredible at that in guarding in space, moving his feet at the grand age of 79 years old. But I just feel like it's a lot to ask from someone like that, where night in and night out, you need to start and play majority of the minutes at center. I wouldn't want to ask that of Al Horford at this point in his career. So then when you look beyond him, it's a rotation of guys like a Luke Kornet or Xavier Tillman, Neemias Queta. There's a lot of different guys that can kind of fill in that role. And a silver lining in this is I feel like this can kind of be the Celtics' way to like try out these 3 guys, because I think all 3 of them bring different things to the table and they can kind of determine who will be that second string center or that third string big behind Kristaps and Al. I personally think to start out at least, it will be Luke Kornet getting a majority of those backup center minutes. Last season, they seemed to really turn to him whenever they needed to have an injury replacement center. And he has been pretty solid, surprisingly enough. As a Knicks fan, looking at Luke Kornet, I never thought that he would be able to be a productive NBA player and contribute to winning. No disrespect. But he has been doing that. He's been proving me wrong and has been very solid when he's been asked to play for the Celtics. Being 7'2", he gives the Celtics a lot of size and length. His rebounding has been super solid. Rim protection, too. He's been able to block some shots. I know he's got that eclipse, I think is what he calls it, where someone's shooting. Instead of closing out to them, he just jumps straight up with his arms to try to block the rim. That somehow works, too. Kind of funny to watch. But shout out to Luke Kornet for really turning his career around and becoming a winning, contributing player. I do think that they will turn to him at first. But if Kornet's not really working out, they do have other options like Xavier Tillman, who I think is very solid, too. He is more compact in his body, where he still is super strong, but I think he's only like 6'8", 6'9". So if the Celtics are looking for a guy with more size, obviously they would look towards Neemias or Luke. But I do think that Xavier Tillman has a lot of value at the center position, kind of like an Al Horford light on defense at least, where he's able to move his feet and be a little more versatile on defense. Offensively, though, he's definitely pretty weak there. And then the last guy is Neemias Queta, and I feel like he is going to be the bottom guy out of all these centers. He's just pretty raw right now, super athletic. He also has great size, being a 7-footer, but I would think that they look to these other two guys before they really look to him. Who knows though? Like I said, this can kind of be used as like a tryout for all of their centers. The one thing that I don't really like about any of these three guys though is it kind of ruins the Celtics 5-out system. None of these guys really shoot threes at a good, efficient rate. I know Luke Cornett early in his career was shooting threes, but for the last few seasons he hasn't really been doing that. So I don't think it's the end of the world, like I said at the beginning of this segment, but it is just something to look at. And when they bring Porzingis back, and if he gets back fully healthy, I'm gonna be honest, there's no main weakness that I can really point to on this roster. It is a damn near perfect roster. And now it is time for the fan segment, and here representing the Boston Celtics, I have my boy Josh. Thank you for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. This is a long time coming, so I'm excited to talk some Boston ball.
For sure. I'm really excited we can finally get this going. For those of you guys who don't already know, make sure you check out the links in the description. I got his Twitter. He's a host of a podcast, Once Upon a Dribble. He's got his own YouTube channel too, all about basketball. So if you're a basketball fan, make sure you check out those links. But let's just jump right into it. I know Boston didn't really have any crazy big moves this offseason, but I'm still interested to see what has been your favorite move they've done.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they kept it pretty straightforward this offseason. I mean, when you win 64 games and win the championship, not much needs changing, but you can certainly always bolster things and reinforce the roster, and that's what they did. A couple things come to mind. I love Boston's first-round pick this year. They got Baylor Shireman. He might struggle to crack the regular rotation as a rookie, but that has more to do with the roster's quality than his skill set and readiness as an NBA player. I still think he'll get some run, and when he does, he should be hand in glove fit with this group. He's got a good perimeter shot, but I think he can function as more than just a 3-point specialist. He stays pretty active on the glass. In film, his handles are solid. He's got good vision. So, you know, with Joe Mazzulla, if you can shoot the ball from 25 plus feet out, you'll get some minutes. So I'm excited for him. And secondly, I think the most important thing is they just extended Tatum and Derek White. JT signed that historic extension, and the dollar amount is eye-popping. I think it's like 5 years, 315 million, something like that. But you do what you got to do to keep your first-team All-NBA player happy, especially considering that he, the joke is he's only 18 years old. He's only 26 years old, right? So he's still going to be hitting his physical prime during this contract. Derek White also goes without saying. I understand that he's also going to be hitting the wrong side of 30 years old, but he's invaluable for Boston. He was their on-off impact advanced numbers monster last year. He had a great postseason. So, I mean, you pay the man the money to maximize your current window for the next 1 to 2 seasons.
Yeah, I like how they were able to kind of just get these extensions out the way, like you said, with Jason Tatum, Derek White, even Sam Hauser got his extension to kind of really keep everyone together. My personal pick was the Derek White extension because it was obvious that Jason Tatum was going to get it. Obvious that or Jaylen Brown already got it. Drew Holiday already got it. I was worried that Derek White might be like, the money dries up and he doesn't get it exactly. So I'm really excited to see him, that he's going to be here for the foreseeable future and kind of keep this team together. Because like you said, he's invaluable. He has so much that he brings to this team, from his defense, ball handling, shooting, scoring, rebounding, literally everything across the board.
He's so good.
Yeah, I know. As role players, I mean, it's literally as high as you can get for Derek White.
For sure.
And I'm just really excited that they're able to kind of keep this core together for a few seasons at least. It's all you can really ask for.
Absolutely.
Moving on to this other question. This one, it might have a little bit more variety of answer. But who do you think is the most underrated on the roster right now?
Yeah, this is a good question. It's easy to get lost in the chaos of the roster. They're stars, they're really deep. They got some high quality role players, high quality starters. In the Celtics case, chaos is a good thing. They have so much talent on the roster that it is easy to lose appreciation for how good some of the individual pieces are. I could probably make an argument for a few guys like, Peyton Pritchard's a fan favorite who's really improved since he was drafted in 2020. You could even argue for a star or two who might be a bit overhated, but I'm actually going to dig deep and shout out Xavier Tillman. Didn't get much playing time in the regular season after they got him from Memphis during the trade deadline, but he came up pretty big in the finals. because Porzingis got hurt. They need some big man minutes, and he supplied. He's an elite switchable defender. He can guard big-bodied centers. He can kind of hang with shifty guards. And finding a player like that is just going to be, really valuable in today's NBA. I will say offensively, Tillman is a bit rough around the edges, but he has shown some promise from behind the arc with his three-point shot. So if he can become a little more reliable with the three-point shot, which again, we all know Joe Mazzulla loves, then I think he'll be high impact, especially with Porzingis still going to be banged up to start the season. And also with Al Horford, he's been fighting off Father Time as long as he can. But at some point, Al Horford theoretically is supposed to decline. And that's where I think Tillman can really shine. And I like what I saw in the finals, and I think he's going to have a big opportunity the first few months of the season. So I think I'm going to go for the X-Man.
Yeah, I really like Xavier Tillman too. I feel like he can kind of replace a lot of what Al Horford brings defensively, at least once Al Horford retires or just declines in age. But like you said, he has that big body where he can guard those bigs and be a paint protector. But then he's got good feet. Like he can kind of move and work in space on defense. So I like that answer. I'm gonna go with another guy coming off your bench with Sam Hauser. I feel like he is pretty underrated because he's one of the best shooters in the NBA. I know like you can kind of go by numbers or anything, but just looking at the numbers, looking at him play, this man has the strap on him and he's got great size. I feel like where he's most underrated is his defense. I feel like a lot of people kind of just say white guy, he can't defend. But he's a very solid team defender. And he shows effort a lot. And when you're surrounded with so many other defensive pieces in this scheme, it could be easy to be picked out. He doesn't let that happen though. He competes and he's came in to be a really good two-way player, that 3-and-D type of guy.
I like that. I kind of call these guys, who are elite three-point shooters, but kind of sieves on defense, glass cannons. Like Duncan Robinson, kind of a glass cannon, right? High volume three-point shooter, elite shooter by any metric, but he's going to get targeted on defense. And yeah, I think that's a good call out on Hauser, is that you never really saw that. He's got some sneaky size on him. I want to say he's like 6'8". Can play the 3 or the 4. I can't remember what his length is as far as like his wingspan, but he's got a good, big body. And when you're taking 6 threes a game and you're making like 42% of them, and you can not be targeted on defense like that, definitely did not expect him to be this important of a player on the roster. But I think Hauser is a good call out, and I'm glad he's locked down.
Yeah, like you said, when you can shoot the ball, Joe Mazzulla loves you. He's the epitome of that. But last question before we wrap this up. Winning the championship, you're on cloud 9, you're all the way up there. Coming into this season, though, what are your expectations? I feel like it's obvious, but I might as well ask.
Yeah, it's defend the title or bust. This team and the core, specifically Tatum and Brown, have been knocking on the door of a championship from literally 2017 to 2023, and then they finally break through last year, just as JT and JB are starting to hit their physical primes. 25 to 30 years old is the sweet spot. So, with the monkey off their backs, extension secured, everyone's financially happy. I expect a very loose and confident team this year. Even if the regular season win total doesn't match 60 plus wins, I think that they're going to be better on a night to night. Like any given game, I think it's just going to be a better team. And they may even have a chip on their shoulder with, some of the noise surrounding Tatum and JB and the Olympics this summer. That's something you usually don't expect in regards to a defending champ, to have a little more of a chip on their shoulder. And I honestly expect that this year. Tatum's been working with Drew Hanlon to tweak his shot, kind of get that hitch out of it. The first couple years in the league, Tatum had a knockdown 3-point shot. I get, with the offensive load increasing and drawing more of the attention of the defense, naturally the percentage is going to dip a little bit, but he's been closer to like 35% the last couple of years. So I'm excited to see if that gets up to like 37, 38%. But, that said, what does worry me just a little, if I was going to nitpick, for a team that won the championship, is the enormous cost of keeping this roster together is kind of looming in the back. It's the elephant in the room right now, because the team is projected to face a pretty big payroll and luxury tax by the 2026 season. We have ownership changes potentially on the horizon, rumored sale by the team. Wick Grossbeck has had the team for decades now. There's some financial pressure mounting. Like you said, we just handed out a ton of money for this roster, and you got to maximize the window, right? This is a 1 to 2 year window just to try and win as much as you can. But anything short of a title this year honestly could be seen as a failure, especially given the cost down the line. But looking at the rest of the Eastern Conference, that said, I feel fairly confident that this team if they're not at least the Final Four, that'd be a pretty big surprise. Even if they lose in the conference finals, that'd be a fairly big upset. So, fast forward to June 2025, I hope they're playing some team out west for a back-to-back chip.
Yeah, when you have a super dominant season like you guys did last year, like I said, the expectations are obvious. It's to repeat. It's to climb that mountain again, get there. For your sake, hopefully they do. For my sake and my Knicks, hopefully they don't.
Man, yeah, that makes sense. Seriously.
I appreciate you coming on, though.
Absolutely,
like I said, guys, if you don't already, make sure you check out all those links in the description. Josh puts out great stuff, great basketball fan and everything. Thank you for coming on, man.
Absolutely, man. And hopefully we see you in the Eastern Conference Finals in May.
And now it is time for my ceiling, floor, and expectations for the Boston Celtics. Starting off with their ceiling, it's going to be an obvious one. Obviously, their ceiling is the #1 seed out east. They just did it last season and dominated it, did it by a super wide margin. So realistically, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to do it again. Then when you look at the playoffs, I mean, again, when you look at what they did last season, it's hard to say that they can't do it again this year. At their ceiling, I definitely think the Celtics can repeat as champions. For their floor, I have them as low as the 2 seed. I know, they really drop in this one. But realistically, I do think the top of the East got better. And I do think that their gap is going to be closed, but I can't see the Celtics really falling drastically down the standings unless they do have a super big injury. But even at the 2 seed, when you look at the playoffs, I could see them going as far as the Eastern Conference Finals, and then maybe losing to whoever is that 1 seed, whether it's the Knicks or the Sixers, maybe even the Bucks in there. But I do expect the Celtics to have a very successful regular season regardless of ceiling or floor. I expect them to have a deep playoff run regardless of ceiling and floor. But at their floor, I have them as losing in the conference finals. And my expectations for the Celtics, I do expect them to be the #1 seed. I do think that they have that talent by far, obviously. And I do expect them to make at least a run back to the finals. If they lose in the conference finals or earlier, I would say that's pretty much a slight disappointment. When you look at this roster, how it's constructed, the results we saw from last year, I do think it's fair to say that their expectation is championship or bust. What do you guys think, though? Let me know in the comments below where you think the Celtics will end in this year's standings. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave it a like, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In the description, there's links to all my social medias, so make sure you follow me on all those to keep up to date with me. Catch y'all.